Welcome, fabulous people. It's your girl, Dr. LeJoia, and welcome to the Faith Education and a Little Sass podcast. Where we keep it real about the intersection of faith, education, and life as a whole. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into my personal journey where I am talking about my personal experience in secular education and Christian education. And so we're going to start with my Catholic school days, and then we're going to transition into my transformative life experience at an HBCU, but we're also going to channel my church involvement, and then we're going to end with the 12 years of education. So if you're ready to hear how all of these pieces come together, obviously with a little sass sprinkled on top, let's go ahead and get started. So let's kick things off with my Catholic school days. Okay, picture this. Little LeJoia, brown plaid uniform, white blouse, and those ever-present knee-high socks. Yeah, that was my uniform from K through 8. My uniform changed in high school, but I'm not going to get into that because that's a lot. We changed every year. But yes, little LeJoia was in that ugly brown plaid uniform, but it wasn't about the uniform for Catholic schools. It was more like a boot camp, right, for the mind and the soul. They structured everything around discipline, including the paddling. And yes, I forgive my teachers for that. But yes, they included discipline, structure, and overall an excellent life, right? We prayed a lot. We prayed when we first got to school. We prayed during school. We prayed, obviously during school, right? We prayed before lunch. We prayed after lunch. We prayed right before we went home. And don't forget the Mass. We had to pray all that time in Mass. And so what I didn't realize then, and what I know now, is that those prayers were laying a foundation for my prayer life and the life I wanted to live. And it was valuable. Now, with the structure, okay? Those nuns, they played no games with me. Sister Helen was still mean. I still think she's mean to this day. But they didn't play because they obviously said that excellence was not one of those things that you had to do, but, well, it is. It was a requirement, okay? Excellence was a requirement in their mind, shortly put. And I didn't play about my education either, only because I knew who I had to go home to. My mom and my grandmother. They did not play about education. So thank you to the Archdiocese of Chicago for my Catholic school education. Did you miss me? Notice anything different? FISAUNIVERSITY. Fisk forever! Let me tell you, walking on those streets of an HBCU was a total breath of fresh air, okay? It was a breath of fresh air. Gone were the uniform days, thank God, to a life full of vibrant tapestry of history, of colors, of a deep sense of community. And I will be honest, when I first got on campus, I almost turned right back around and came home because obviously being first generation college student, we didn't know the ins and outs of preparing for the financial piece of it. And so I always have to make tribute to this part to my grandmother, because If it wasn't for her cashing in her bonds, I would not have stayed. And so I want to make sure I honor my grandmother right now, Miss Irene McKenzie, in this segment, just because if it wasn't for her, I would not have continued my education at an HBCU. It was at Fisk University that I knew who I was becoming. And it was also on this same campus where I found my voice as a young Black woman who was going out into this professional world. I found my voice academically, I found my voice socially, and I found my voice spiritually. Okay? It wasn't just that I was a student. I wasn't just a student. I was more than a student. I was a part of a legacy, a part of excellence, and a part of a legacy of resilience, right? Because let's be honest, HBCUs are resilient, especially for them to have been open for so many years. You're part of a legacy of resilience, and I'm so grateful for that. My faith, which had been nurtured in those Catholic school classrooms, had blossomed in a whole new way on the campus at the HBCU. Okay? I learned not only to think critically, but I learned to evaluate, and I learned how to grow, which at the HBCU world, matriculate is the word, okay? But I've always just I've learned who I was and who God wanted me to be as an adult. And let's not forget the swag, okay? Because walking those campuses give you a whole deep sense of confidence knowing that you're a part of a tradition of excellence. Get into it. Now let's talk about Sundays, because Sundays were not for sleeping in my household. And so what we had to do, we had to get up on Sundays, okay? Because Sunday church, Sunday school, those were non-negotiables in the house. So yes, no sleeping in on my end. But Sunday school is actually where I started teaching. Yes, little LeJoia was teaching on those youth days. On any Sunday that kind of spotlighted the youth, I was one of the teachers. And I was already taking charge in that primary class, sharing what I knew about the Bible, but also sharing the stories and the characters of the Bible. And then there was Baptist Training Union, what we affectionately call BTU, okay, because that's too many words. Now, BTU was kind of like a church boot camp, okay? It was where we learned the ways of the church, but it was also what we learned as how to lead in the community. Now I don't know about any other church, but I do know that at my church we had a cheer squad, okay? And we had to pep up the people for BTU because it was always after church. And so we would go get our Sunday little meal and then come back at 3:30 for Baptist Training Union. And so the youth were in charge of pepping up the adults because they were sleepy. And so one of our cheers that I'm glad to share, and anybody who went to Original Philadelphia, y'all know this cheer. We are the BTU Express and we are dynamite. Yes! Let's not forget about those Baptist conventions, right? Those were the big leagues, okay? That's where you have the big name pastors come to preach. Now, it wasn't just about the sermons. It wasn't just about the discussions and the fellowship. All of those were great, okay? But it was also deepening our faith and putting it into action. Throughout all of these experiences, I learned that faith was not something that was just practiced on Sundays. Nope. But it was something that became a way of life for me. So you may be wondering, how does all of this, the Catholic school, HBCU life, and my deep involvement in the church connect to my career in education? Well, we'll just say that God has a plan. And he had a plan that was way bigger than I could have ever imagined. Y'all know I have a story, right? When I was a child, I don't even remember how old I was, but if you came over my house and you were my company, we only had two options, maybe three in a possible. to of playing. We were going to, school was definitely the first option. I had my little chalkboards, I had the chalk and my eraser, I had my stuffed animals lined up, you know, in the desks as if they were rows. And I even had a desk from the school. I don't remember how I got that and how that ended up in our apartment. But school was definitely the option of playing, one of the things we played when we were young. I've always been a firm believer that education is not just about filling one's head with knowledge, but it's more so about transforming the heart and the soul. God has a way of weaving things together in our lives that we can't always see. So after years of running away from this, and after I graduated, I did not want to tap into this calling of education. I definitely tried to avoid it, but I found myself drawn in to teaching. And so it was in my classroom where in the second and third grades, I was able to pour into my classrooms, not really just teaching them the curriculum or all the different subject areas, but more so pouring into their character and teaching them about life. Then after those 6 years in the classroom, I decided that it was time to tap into my leadership abilities. And so I was called to an assistant principal role at the high school level, y'all. So I left the little babies to go with the big babies at the high school. But this role means so much to me because it wasn't just about guiding our students, which I love my kids, okay? Don't get me wrong. But it was also it's also about how I am leading my teachers. It's also about my shifting the school culture, changing the narrative of the school, and also making sure that I remain grounded in my faith and making sure that it's centered around any decision and the work that I do every day. Now, don't get me wrong, because it is challenging. And to say it is challenging is certainly an understatement, but it is also rewarding in that aspect. All right, now it's time to really be real, okay? Because now it's time to talk about those challenges. And yes, there are plenty of challenges. And yes, a lot of people walk away from the profession because of those challenges. So balancing academic achievement with trying to fulfill your mission with the Christian education, it is definitely a challenge, okay? We have the pressures of standardized testing or any administrative duty that I have that can threaten to overshadow my work in my spiritual world. And so one of the things that you're going to learn about me is that I may step away for a little bit to regroup, but I'm never one to back down from a challenge. Now, with faith, determination, and of course a little sass, I found ways to navigate these challenges. Whether it's advocating for my students, supporting my teachers, or just simply finding creative ways to incorporate new strategies into the curriculum, I am learning still that you can be firm and faithful, disciplined, and devoted. But let's get into it, because those triumphs are so sweet, right? Because I know and I knew at that time that I was making a big difference in my students' lives, not just academically, but also in their spiritual lives as well. Not just my students, but also everyone who I come in touch with, they're getting tapped into. Looking forward, I am so excited about the future of Christian education. And while we know that the world is ever changing, the change also affects the needs of our students. And so with that, there is always a need for an education that nurtures the mind and soul and the spirit. So with that said, I am committed to continuing this work, to being a part of such a movement that is so massive, being a part of a movement that places faith at the center of learning, I can do that through mentorship, whether that's through leadership or advocacy. I know God has more in store for his people, and I'm so excited about fulfilling this work. Let me tell you, I'm bringing faith, I'm bringing my experience, and of course, I'm bringing a little bit of Sass along for the ride. Why? Because the future of Christian education is so bright, and I'm so honored that God called me to be a part of it. Hey guys, I hope you have enjoyed my personal journey through faith, education, and all things sassy. And if you've enjoyed my journey, then go ahead and follow me on all social media platforms, okay? At Dr. LeJoia Speaks. That's where I'll be sharing more insights, more inspiration, in all things sassy. So make sure you hit that follow button on all major platforms so that we can connect. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me today on this journey through my life and career. I hope my story has inspired you to reflect on your own journey, to see how faith and education can work together to shape not just your life, but the lives of those around you. Remember, whether you're in a Catholic school classroom, walking the halls of an HBCU, or leading a school as an educator, your faith is your foundation. So stand firm on it, and don't be afraid to add a little sass while you're at it. Until next time, this is Dr. LeJoia Van Hook, reminding you to keep the faith, keep learning, and keep shining. If you've been blessed by today's episode, share it with a friend. Let's grow this community together, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. Your support means the world to me and helps me to keep spreading the word. So go ahead, hit that follow button at Dr. LeJoia Speaks, and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, keep the faith, keep learning, and keep shining.